guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Megan. I'm a 26, almost 27-year-old mom to two little kiddos. And today I'm filming a video that I've been putting off for a very long time. Not because it's something that I don't want to talk about, but because it is terrifying to be so vulnerable, especially on the internet. My audience is lovely, just the best in the entire world, but you know, not everybody who watches your video is going to be somebody who's familiar with you. So please keep that in mind and be kind in the comments, because today I am going to be talking about my mental health journey. I feel like this is so important for me to talk about, even though it scares the crap out of me, because it is so important as moms to really keep an eye on our mental health. And I feel like it's something that is not talked about openly enough. So today I'm gonna bear all. My mental illness has affected my entire life, and I feel like I've mentioned it, you know, here and there in vlogs, like, oh, I'm really anxious today or whatever, but I don't feel like I've really sat down and gone into depth with you about that and about my journey with it. And it's something that is such a huge obstacle in my life on a daily basis that it feels kind of odd that I haven't really done a deep dive on it yet. So I basically very recently got a brand new shiny mental health diagnosis, and I am going to talk about it, but I feel like in order to understand why this is such a big deal for me, you kind of have to understand my journey with mental health. And so I'm going to kind of start at the beginning. I always felt like I was a very intense kid. Like, I was 0 to 100, where if I liked something, was like all in, absolutely obsessed with it. I had some like random weird mental health things as a kid. Like, I remember having an episode for a couple of months where I would wash my hands obsessively, like until they bled, because I was so worried about germs, and I thought it was maybe OCD. Never really figured it out, never went to therapy for it or anything. Then when I was 17 years old, I had a bad breakup and my life kind of fell apart. I was being horribly bullied. It was just so bad that I actually finished my senior school year from home because I just couldn't even be on campus. It was so awful. I also had some stuff going on with my family and a little bit of strain there. So at that point, my parents made the decision to get me started with therapy, and I'm so grateful that they did, because it has been life-changing for me over the last 8 years. Initially, I was mostly going to kind of talk through that situation that I was in, but as I continued to do therapy, I realized that a lot of the things that I was dealing with weren't maybe necessarily neurotypical. I was under a lot of stress in college, and the depression kind of led into all of those years. I was also working multiple jobs while also going to school, and I was just so stressed out, so anxious. I thought I had depression. I probably did have a little bit of depression, but I noticed when my situation calmed down, I graduated, I started a regular job, my mental health really did seem to improve. So throughout all these years, I had been going to therapy. I had been on several different SSRIs trying to figure out what medication would help me the most, which I've been so thankful for. And I feel like in general, I'm a pretty happy person. So I've had, you know, times in my life where I've been severely depressed, but there's also these sparkling moments of joy in those times. So it's not like I was just like sad for years of my life, but it was something that I was like really having to keep on top of, and it was sucking all of my emotional energy just to like get through the day and manage my symptoms. But like I said, after I got out of school, everything pretty much got better. I would say that I still had some anxiety, but my depression pretty much completely went away. I had a much better work-life balance. I was actually sleeping, which there's a huge correlation between sleep and mental health. I started YouTube, which was such an amazing creative outlet for me. I was really enjoying pouring my heart and soul into that. We moved up here to Seattle, and I got pregnant with Rowan. Most of my pregnancy was pretty good with him, I would say, until the last month, when I really started going stir crazy. All of the body image issues that I had kind of quietly dealt with my whole life all came up to the surface, and I just became very panicked about my body and what it would look like after having a baby, and just feeling so out of control of it. I got pregnancy nose, which sounds like a very minuscule thing, but looking in the mirror every day, I hardly recognized myself, and that was really crazy for me. So I had quit therapy when I moved from Southern California up to here, just because I hadn't found a therapist, and I had been trying to find one that whole time. Finally found my current therapist. Her name is Keely. She is amazing. I'm so thankful that I found her. And I started to talk with her about some of my issues with my body image and gender disappointment, which I've talked about before on this channel. Was kind of working through that all in the latter half of my pregnancy. And then I gave birth, and it was the most wonderful, magical experience of my life. And I feel like all the weight that I had put on myself about my body image just kind of lifted. I was so proud of myself. I felt like me again, even though I still looked very different. But I feel like kind of the through line in my mental health journey is that I've always struggled with anxiety. I'm somebody who has a really hard time relaxing, even when there's nothing going on, there's nothing I have to do. I deal with a lot of guilt over stupid, minuscule things that I don't really need to feel guilty about. And sometimes I just feel like my anxiety stops me from enjoying my life because it's really hard to stay present when you're so anxious, which is why I'm so big on presence and romanticizing your life. And I wrote the Everyday Presence Journal because I needed those tools to really help me. And the worst my anxiety has ever been was right after Rowan was born. I did develop postpartum anxiety. And what that looked like for me was a lot of intrusive thoughts all the time about bad things happening to him, bad things happening to Matt, to me, something to break up our family. So again, continued in therapy. I was on medication at that point, and I slowly worked through that. I have worked through a lot of body image stuff still, and I've kind of just been like keeping a handle on my anxiety and depression. I will say in the last few years, my mental health is the best that it's been in a really long time, and I think that's largely in part to romanticizing my life, as well as, of course, therapy, which has just been a godsend for me. So that kind of catches you up on my journey. So now I'm going to talk about my new diagnosis, which may be why you clicked on this video. Basically, a couple of years ago when I started on TikTok was pushing a lot of ADHD content at me. And I was like, ha, TikTok thinks I have ADHD. That's funny. And then a few months ago, Matt read an article about ADHD and how it's often underdiagnosed in women, or it can be misdiagnosed as anxiety and depression. So he was like, babe, look, this is really interesting. This is a lot of the stuff that you talk about. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Huh. And then I moved on. Then again, about a month ago, one of my friends that I follow on Instagram who has ADHD was posting some ADHD like infographics and stuff on her stories and like some of the symptoms. And I was like, holy cow, that sounds like me. So I brought it up to my therapist and I was like, I don't want to be like that millennial who just sees everything on the internet and thinks I have it. But I also have been very heavily focused on my mental health and in this therapy journey and constantly journaling and everything for 8 years. And this feels like it could be a fit for me. Can we test for it? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. Actually, a lot of the things that you've said to me seem like they may have checked that box, but again, they present so similarly in women as anxiety and depression do that it can be very hard to tell them apart. Basically, what I've learned is up to 75% of women who have ADHD go undiagnosed until very late in life or never get diagnosed at all, which is crazy. And what my therapist said is that basically ADHD presents very outwardly in boys most of the time, and they have kind of more of that hyperactive tendency where they're like climbing the bookshelf in class instead of sitting down in their seat. But for a lot of girls who have ADHD, they have the inattentive type or the mixed type, and that can be a lot of like internalized symptoms. So it's not necessarily as noticeable, especially in a classroom setting, so a lot of times it doesn't get caught. So we went through this whole process of testing using all the questionnaires and the DSM. Something that I've found really interesting in this is that there is no like one way to diagnose adult ADHD. There's like kind of a bunch of different piecemeal things that you do. So like childhood history, the DSM criteria, there's like a self-reporting questionnaire. Some therapists will cobble together different things like your report cards growing up and teachers' comments and all of that, because you do have to have had symptoms prior to age 12 in order for you to be diagnosed with ADHD, because it is like a lifelong thing. It's not something that just like kind of pops up one day. So spoiler alert, I got diagnosed with ADHD and it was shocking to me. Like absolutely shocking to know that I had gone my whole life with this thing, and like I had known, growing up, like what ADHD was, or thought I had known. I think I mostly knew what the hyperactive type looked like because all the people that I knew that had it were male. And as soon as I found that out, I feel like a million tiny little things that didn't really seem to fit with my previous mental health diagnoses all snapped into place, and it all made sense. And it's been a very emotional journey for me because, like I said, I've always felt a little bit different, a little bit intense. I feel like my brain doesn't work the way that it's supposed to sometimes, which of course isn't true. It just works differently. But society is set up for neurotypical people. And I think I never explored this previously because I was like, well, I was a great student. Like I graduated from high school with like a 4.5 GPA in my international baccalaureate degree. So clearly I wasn't having any problems in the classroom. But what I didn't realize was that it was affecting my life in a lot of different ways that made me create these coping mechanisms and strategies to set myself up for success that did not come easily at all. Like I remember as a really young kid in elementary school, I was constantly a mess, like leaving my jacket at school, leaving my lunchbox at school, leaving my textbooks at school, and calling friends to fax me the pages for homework. Just aged myself a little bit there. My desk was always the worst one in the classroom. My teachers called me the absent-minded professor because I was intelligent, but I was so disorganized and just kind of like flighty. I would forget things. Now I know that was my ADHD. It's also been huge for me in realizing that a lot of the things that I didn't really know how to name that bother me with my mental health can be attributed to overstimulation. This is very TMI, but some things that are very triggering for me are like when my hair is greasy at all, even if I can't really feel it, if I know, like I can't focus on anything else until I wash my hair, or like if my underwear doesn't lay like perfectly in the center of my butt underneath my pants. And I know that might sound a little bit weird, but I feel like I want to talk about it because I don't want to just pretend that I don't know, I guess I just don't want to glaze over it. I've also realized that I have a huge tendency towards hyperfocus and hyperfixation as well. So this can be both like kind of longer term and shorter term. So in the longer term, like all the obsessions I had as a kid for a period of time and then would just like drop them and pick up something else were like kind of my brain searching for dopamine. From what I understand, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mental health professional. Probably should have made that disclaimer at the beginning. I'm not a mental health professional, just sharing my journey. The ADHD brain isn't able to effectively convert dopamine into norepinephrine. So it's constantly searching for more dopamine. Some of the things that trigger dopamine are like novel experiences, accomplishing small tasks. Foods can be a huge one, or anything that gives you kind of like a rush. So yeah, that's kind of like the longer term, I guess, like hyperfixation. But I also struggle with hyperfocus, where like if I'm doing something and there's somebody else in the room like trying to talk to me, like I'm so focused on what I'm doing that I literally do not even hear them. I do not process that they've said anything to me. Sometimes I don't even realize somebody else is in the room. So I have to be very careful during the day to not start projects or activities that I know are going to trigger that kind of hyperfocus, because I obviously want to be attentive to my kids. Some other symptoms that I have are impatience. I really, really struggle with patience, not just like with my kids and my temper, but just like anything. Like if I have a problem with my computer and I call Matt in to look at it and he can't fix it within like 15 seconds, I'm just like, it's fine. I just want to get back on my computer. I'll just like live with it being broken. Like I have absolutely no patience. I also have difficulty managing our household because on one hand, my ADHD makes it very difficult because of the executive function to actually get things cleaned up. But then on the other hand, I get very overstimulated when it's cluttered. So what that looks like is like a space that looks clean when you see it, but then you open drawers or cupboards and it's a disaster. I think one of the coping mechanisms I picked up when I was younger was like kind of hyper organization, especially with work and like my planners. I'm always talking about my planner because I have to write everything down. I have to have a list for everything. So I have to have a list for what groceries I have in the house, outfit ideas, because object permanence is something that people with ADHD can struggle with. So if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. What packages are on the way, what campaigns I need to follow up with. Just basically everything that lives in my brain has to be down on paper or in my notes on my phone. And with all of these symptoms, I'm not an expert again, so they vary from person to person, but this is just personally what I experience. And please feel free to add or correct me if I've said something incorrect, because this is a very new journey for me, so I'm kind of still learning it all myself. But the single biggest thing for me that I think has been misdiagnosed as anxiety for a long time. I think I do have some anxiety and some anxious tendencies, but this specific thing that I always thought, maybe is it anxiety, is actually an ADHD thing, is that feeling that I'm constantly just being run by a motor. The way that I first described it to my therapist when we started our sessions together was that I feel like there's this internal metronome and it's just going like crazy and I cannot slow it down, and it makes my body feel like I need to match the pace of my actions to that internal metronome, which can be a really big struggle because again, it makes it really difficult to stay present. It makes it difficult to relax and to enjoy activities with my family. It kind of ties in with that impatience thing where if I'm doing something super cute with the family and we're all just chilling or whatever, like 5 minutes in, I'm like, I still want to be enjoying this, but I am so antsy. My brain's just always looking for the next thing. So yeah, as you can see, this has been just a life-changing thing for me. I feel like even just bringing awareness to it has made things so much easier. It's given me more compassion for myself and also compassion for little Megan, who struggled with a lot of things and didn't really know why. I just got told that I was irresponsible by like teachers and stuff, but really like I was dealing with executive dysfunction. I know I might get this question. I'm not currently on medication for this. I don't have any plans to. I'm open to it, but right now I'm breastfeeding and that's just like a whole complicated thing. So I'm just managing with therapy, and like I said, this is very new, so I'm just doing a lot of research and trying to figure out where it fits in to my life. All right, sorry about the angle change. My camera died because I've been talking about this forever, but I didn't want to end without talking about this next part, which is that with any kind of mental disorder, I believe is what ADHD is actually classified with, there are negative symptoms. There are things that make life a little bit more difficult to deal with, but there are also superpowers. Jenna Kutcher, if you're familiar with her, she's kind of a leading figure in the entrepreneurial and marketing space, also recently found out that she has ADHD, and it was really great because she did a podcast episode on it like just a week after I got my own diagnosis, and I didn't know she had it. So it was really cool to listen to her take on it. And although we have very different symptoms, one thing that she said that really resonated with me was that she thinks that she has been successful because of her ADHD and not in spite of it. And I think that that is totally true for me. So people with ADHD are really great in creative careers. They're also like the perfect candidates for being an entrepreneur or owning their own business. They're often hyper creative. They are super starters because we want that dopamine. So we are really good at starting projects. Maybe not so good at finishing them sometimes, but hey, working on it. That hyper focus can also lend itself to being incredibly driven and passionate about what you're doing. A lot of people with ADHD are just full of ideas all the time, which can get quite stressful when your brain is just constantly like that internet browser with 20 different tabs open and you don't know which one of them is playing music. Like that is a cliche meme, but it really is how my brain feels most of the time. Like there's always some kind of song going that usually feels quite chaotic. And then I have like 3 or 4 different strains of thought like all happening at the same time and like almost talking over each other. But that also means that I have a lot of ideas. I think outside the box. I think my ADHD makes me ambitious, it makes me a perfectionist, it makes me competitive. And because my brain is always searching for dopamine, I get kind of bored quickly with things, which causes me to always reach for the next thing and really push myself. One account that I'd really recommend following if you think you might have ADHD or you know you have ADHD and you just want to laugh along with me is cherry.adhd. She does a lot of content about ADHD as a mom. This is definitely something I'll continue to talk more about on my channel in like vlogs and stuff as it kind of plays out in my life. It's been a huge paradigm shift and I didn't want to neglect to acknowledge it. I wanted to let you know that it's something that I'm going through and that if you're going through it too, you're not alone, whether it's ADHD or OCD or anxiety and depression. We all struggle with things and it doesn't mean we're broken, it just means we're a little different. Again, I cannot overstate the importance of the professional help and guidance that I've had on this journey. So I highly, highly recommend go and talking to a therapist or a psychiatrist. Mental health is something that I think should be a part of basic health care. Just like well checkups, I think everybody should go in for routine therapy sessions because it's so important to take care of our minds as well as our bodies, and it makes such a big difference in how you live life and how fulfilled you're feeling. And yeah, thank you for allowing me to share and allowing me to be vulnerable with you guys. I appreciate your love and support. Hopefully this was also helpful for you, whether it is something that you're also struggling with and you want to feel less alone, or you just know somebody who's going through this and this kind of helps you maybe understand what they're going through even just a little bit better. I'm still here. I'm still the same old Megan. And of course, I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.
Golden, golden things. Golden, my father only golden. Golden, golden things.